So basically what we're going to do today is we're going to show you guys how to powder your hair from start to finish. Then the next video we'll put in the color powder, and then the next video we will style. So that's my plan anyway. Basically what happened was that the voice somehow didn't end up with the video. So I thought you'd want to see this anyway, so this is how we're going to do it. The first step for getting your hair powdered is that you're going to comb it really well, get all the tangles out. And as you can see, the comb that I'm using is a wooden comb. We're going to have combs in the shop. And basically, I was thinking this would be a really great comb to have in the shop. It's made in Italy. And so let me know what you guys think. This is pomade, and of course you guys know you can find this in the shop as well. We have soft pomade and hard pomatums. So whatever you guys like better, soft or hard, your choice. Some people say that the soft would be used for the beginning, and then the hard would be used to like tame the frizz. I love the hard. So anyway, basically what we're doing, because my hair is so long now with the historical hair care, it's just growing and getting really nice and thick. I used to be able to just pomade everything, rub it in my hands, and get it through good, and we're good to go. But now when you pomade and powder with your hair being longer and thicker, you actually need to separate everything. So basically what I'm doing is I'm combing in the pomatum or pomade, getting it really well worked in my hair. So my hair looks damp. You can see it's nice and shiny. That's actually very healthy. So basically comb, and then we need to put a apron on or a dressing gown so we don't get the powder all over. So here I'm showing you a really cool find. I'm always searching for antiques and historical pieces that I can use. This is a powder tureen, an 18th century powder tureen, and it actually, when you open it up, it's meant to hold your powder and a down powder puff. So these powder puffs that we have in the shop are made with merino wool, which is super awesome for getting a good amount of powder in your hair. When you're working with different powders, you're going to have your powder puff and you're going to have your shaker. And so it's really great to have both of them. Basically what I'm doing now is I started at the bottom and I'm working my way up through my hair. You need to work in sections, and you need to powder all your pomaded hair in your section, and then kind of comb it out a little bit, work that powder puff in there, get the powder down to the roots. And you have to keep going up. So the thicker and the longer your hair is, the longer it's going to take. So as you can see, it's looking really good. And I'm basically working at a really fast pace, showing you guys how this is done. And that's why powder shakers and powder puffs are so important. Having, one or the other is great. Having both of them is perfect. In fact, the merino powder puffs are excellent for putting the color in your hair, the color powder. So here's a back view. You can see exactly how I'm doing it. I'm getting the powder, I'm working it with my fingers. I'm working with a puff, and I keep going. Oh, I ran out of powder there. Yep, empty powder. Okay, so we refilled it, and we just keep going in sections, and you can kind of see the difference in hair color already. Now, some of you have seen my photos where my hair is like a really cool reddish pink. That is from the colored hair powder, and we will get to that later. This is just for powdering your hair. So when it's long and thick, you need to do it in sections. When it's not, if it's fine or thin, you don't necessarily need to do it in sections, but just make sure to get it into the roots. I'm combing things out. It's really, really important. When you're thinking about powder and putting powder in your hair, there's a couple different styles. If you're looking for like the really powdered look of the early 18th century, combing it out isn't necessarily that important. You have to still do it, but it doesn't need to be done as much as the late 18th century you really need to comb it out really, really well. And that's where your wooden brush, your bone brush, as well as your boar bristle hairbrushes, and we're going to get those in the shop as well. They work excellent for distributing the powder. So as you can see, I'm still working. It's a very long process. And while you're doing that, you're going to need to brush just to make sure to distribute everything properly. Then when you're ready for your powder, it's really important that you put your powder cape on, or put something on that's going to kind of stop the powder from getting all over your lap. So here I am showing one of my more recent finds. It's a powder tureen from the 18th century. It's meant to hold not only your hair powder, but a small down powder puff as well. The powder puffs that we have in the shop are made out of merino wool, and they are super awesome for catching a lot of powder and getting it into your hair. Those are a little too big, they're not going to fit in the tureen, but we're also working on getting the down powder puffs into our shop as well. So I'm going to fast forward through this stuff a little bit, but basically you can see I'm separating it out, and I'm using my shaker and my hair puff to start working the powder in, making sure to get it in its roots. And it's really great if you have a shaker, it's really great if you have a powder puff, but if you have both of them, that's like the ultimate. That's how to really get the powder into your hair. You know, powder puff is also great for very fine work at the end, but having your shaker and your powder puff is really necessary for a really good saturation of powder. So I'm going to keep going here super fast, and you can see how I'm using both the shaker and the powder puff. And here's another view. And sometimes I comb it through with my fingers too. See, all that extra powder has to get brushed out. So that's why you need your comb and your boar bristle brush. Oh, we ran out of powder. Yeah, empty powder. So you can see we're separating it. Now, when you work with your powder puffs for your color, you're going to actually want 2 different powder puffs. Don't use the same powder puff that you use with your white common powder for your colored hair powder. You need 2 different puffs for that. You will thank me later, trust me. So you can see what I'm doing, how I'm kind of working it. I'm using a hairpin to pin things up when I'm not using it. Pulling it forward, getting it in the roots, using my powder shaker, and then pulling it back, using the puff to really work that powder in there. And then sometimes I actually use my fingers, and I really try and like scratch my head and get it in there really well. So as you start brushing and as you work your powder puff through, you're going to notice your hair is going to become really wonderfully thick. And you can see it's already got a lot of body, starting to get a lot of body, and what looked, you know, damp or greasy or wet is really not anymore. And that's what soaks up the powder, and that's what makes the powder stick to you. So if you don't use your pomatum, it's just not going to work. I was reading in like a 1780s book, and it talked about the dangers of just powdering without pomade. So they were saying if you powder without pomade, your hair can get brittle and it can break off. So, you know, I don't necessarily think that's true, that your hair is going to break off if you don't use pomatum, but their point was that in order to get, you know, the lovely thickness, you really need to use that pomatum to get the powder to stick to it. So as you can see, I am brushing my hair out now, and I'm explaining the large tooth combs versus the small tooth combs. Large tooth combs work really well for just working through your hair in the beginning. Once you start getting to the finer work, to the end work, where you're going to start using the smaller tooth comb, and then you're going to use your boar bristle brush. And you're going to kind of see the powder. If you can see the floor, it's full of powder. And that's just the excess powder that's coming off. So Yep, you just gotta keep going, and you can kind of see the little bits of powder in your hair. The more you brush, the more it's gonna get worked in, and the smoother the color is going to be. It's still gonna change. You can see the difference, you know, the color change. But it just depends what kind of look you want. And for this example, I did this all week. I did the powder and the pomade all week, and I gradually built up the color of the pink in my hair. I don't have it in right now in there, but so basically what I did was, you know, I did my my first pomade and powder in the regular hair powder, as you can see, and then after the days following, I would repowder just a little bit every day with the pink powder and, you know, the pink powder puff, because I keep the powder puff separate. And as I kept working it in and using my boar bristle brush, it became really lovely. You would think that it was my actual hair color. The color was so smooth and so even. So that's just something you want to think about. I keep brushing and brushing and brushing. But it's a lot of brushing, and I cut out the part of using the boar bristle brush just because it takes so long. But don't forget that if you want really smooth color, use your boar bristle brush. So I wanted to kind of show you how we started the pink powder. We learned a lot as we went along. Basically, you can see the pink powder here. It is messy, and I have a different puff for that. I don't use my regular hair puff. And I was following a 1780 hair manual, and they had suggested that you dress your hair and then put the powder in. So basically you would put your first pomade and powder in, just like we did through the whole video, and then you would dress your hair like I did, except you would comb in, make sure to comb your hair pieces really good to get that powder really saturated well through there, so you don't have like gobs of powder like I did. And then you would take your pink hair powder and you would put it on just like I'm doing now, and it would give you this really cool cast. And then they said the cast of just a hint of colored powder was very popular, and you could even dust a little bit of white powder over if you wanted to. And so that's what I was trying to do to see what that cast would actually look like. And it was really interesting. In the end, I chose that I didn't really like the cast too much. I wanted more of a fuller color, or more of a darker color. So basically what I'm doing here is I am using my really quick powder cone, which I always wanted a regular pretty paper powder cone, but this doesn't a pinch, so it will stain your face. So as harsh as that sounds, you know, it'll come off with a little bit of water, and that's where you would use your scented waters to take that off. But having a cone to cover you while you apply the colored powder, you know, any colored powder, it would be great to have a cone. And also a dressing gown or something to cover up in a cape would really help. So as I'm working with this, you can see the color on my powder puff, and if you can just imagine, it does get everywhere. So when you do this, you know, make sure you're in an area that can be cleaned up really well. Another thing that I noticed was that even though when they wanted you to powder, you know, you're supposed to have your hair dressed, and I'm assuming that the best way to powder with the colored powder would be a powder bellows, and then you would have your cone, you know, holding it up, and so you wouldn't have to really worry about hurting your hairstyle. That's, you know, the dressing that you've already done. But with putting it on without a bellows and by doing it yourself, which a lot of women did, you have to be really careful not to hurt your hair that's already dressed, and I had to put an extra bobby pin in because I kind of knocked it out. I think that's really classy of me too, using a hair roller to clean my face, but you can kind of see the pink tint it's given my face. And so what's really important when you're dressing your hair for the 18th century is that you dress it in a style that complements your facial shape. Now, that style did not complement my facial shape. So, trial and error, I didn't like it. I also want to tell you guys that it's really important, if you want to build on that color, to work it in over a couple days. Don't just assume that, you know, you're going to be able to do it in one day, because what I found was after I took all of that out that night, and I probably spent a good 25-30 minutes combing it out with my boar bristle brush, the pink color really started saturating my hair. And through the next few days, I would keep adding the pink powder in before I would start my hairstyle. And I think that's really important too. If you just want to cast like the 1780s book talked about, you know, I think this is a really great way to do it. You can kind of see that instead of being really white, it does have a little bit of a pink cast. And if you had actually taken the time, like I should have, to comb out my hair pieces and make them all really nice, it would be really nice and even, and it would be really pretty. But if you want a really good darker color, then you want to work that powder in. Don't just lightly touch your hair with the powder puff. You know, use the powder puff and kind of push it through your hair with the colored powder, and that's really going to help. So I just wanted to show you, if you look at these photos, you'll see the first two. The first one is with my hairstyle that I didn't really like at all. The second one is when I started brushing everything out, and you can notice the difference between how much more color it got, how much more pinkish the color got. And then these last photos are the finished product. So that was me adding powder in for about 3 or 4 days to get that color from the pink powder, and I'll show you guys exactly how that's done in the next videos. So if you guys have any questions, let me know, and I am happy to help you guys. Other than that, stop over at www.litttlebits.etsy.com and pick up some historical hair care.